The first sign that the universe had shifted came from the silence. Summer Jam crowds are legendary for screaming back every bar. But when Jim Jones strutted onto that stage in 2024, the roar never arrived. Phones were raised, not in salute, but in disbelief. Then, like a judge's gavel, Funk Flex killed the music mid-verse. No words, just dead air swallowing a self-proclaimed capo. Rewind a few months, and that mute button was unthinkable. Jim was still a Harlem fixture, a reality TV favorite, a pod guest who could spike views with a single facts. But one runaway hot take detonated 3 decades of goodwill, and the fallout is still glowing. It started casual, on the Joe Budden couch, the place rappers visit when they want a safe swing at controversy. Asked for his personal top 5, Jim pivoted to erasure. Nas, he said, never really moved him, never shaped the streets, never made the kids dress different. A shrug, a sip of water, a missed beat in the background track. Nobody laughed. Even Joe's face flickered. Within minutes, Twitter screens were filling with side-by-side stats. Illmatic certified platinum 6 times. Nas lyrics taught in Ivy League seminars. A 21-album catalog versus Jim's 2 gold plaques that fans had to Google to remember. Jim could have walked it back, blamed tequila, called it barbershop banter. Instead, he spun the block on Shannon Sharpe's nightcap and doubled down. I'm more influential than Nas, he said, voice steady, shoulders squared. He invoked his teenage son, claimed the boy can't name one Nas record. It was a flex meant to prove generational distance. It landed like proof of cultural illiteracy. Memes splashed across Instagram. Jim's discography formatted as an empty Spotify playlist titled Influence. Nas trended for 48 hours without typing a word. The internet dragging might have cooled in a week, but Jim pressed the gas on bag fuel. Now the claim morphed. Not only was Nas overrated, Jim insisted he'd granted the Queen's legend a viral revival. Never been talked about like this in his life, he bragged. Timeline receipts shredded that fantasy in minutes. Nas had just wrapped the King's Disease trilogy, scored his first Grammy, and sold out Madison Square Garden, without throwing a single jab. While the capo shouted into microphones, a different chessboard was being assembled, 5,000 miles away. At Louis Vuitton's menswear debut in Paris, Pharrell signaled the band. The runway soundtrack was fresh clips, Pusha T and No Malice back together after a decade. Models glided past Jay-Z, Beyonce, Rihanna. Every billionaire in streetwear sat front row. Mid-beat, Pusha's voice sliced the air.
Chasing a feature outside your element.
No names, yet every ear heard the target. He wasn't uploading a SoundCloud rebuttal. He weaponized haute couture and billion-dollar optics, reminding anyone in rap that clout chasing ends where legacy begins. In Harlem alleys that night, Jim lunged at the same beat, recording a freestyle over chains and whips. The brick wall backdrop, the red cup, the grainy phone cam, everything screamed nostalgia, except the desperation in his eyes. He dragged No Malice's faith journey into the mud, a miscalculation bigger than any lyric sheet. Pusha didn't fire back instantly. His silence felt predatory, like a lean Siberian tiger waiting for one misstep in white snow. Then came Summer Jam. Rumors said Jim begged for a late edition slot to reclaim the narrative. He bounced out, mic high, Dipset anthem cued, and the crowd stared. Wordless judgment. 2 decades earlier, he'd turned that same festival into confetti. Now, Flex cut the channel and segued to commercial. Jim's eyes flicked left, then down, the final credit roll on an era that once owned mixtape summers. While career self-sabotage played out on feeds, Nas unveiled a different headline. Resorts World Queens, a $5 billion casino complex bringing union jobs and equity stakes to his home borough. Where Jim craved playlists, Nas broke ground on generational wealth. Boardroom photos replaced diss tracks. Concrete outshone clout. Future isn't something you wait for, his voiceover said in the promo reel. It's something you build. Fans noticed the symmetry. One rapper chasing TikTok moments, the other rewriting real estate maps. Back in Paris, Pharrell posted a studio selfie. Gold LV monogram walls, Pusha leaning over a console, captioned, "Checkmate loading." Insiders whispered the reunion album skewers anyone who dared disturb luxury quiet. Jim appeared on a smaller podcast, arms folded, insisting he still hadn't heard the clip's single. Even the host's eyebrows betrayed belief. The more he denied listening, the more he sounded like a man streaming it in secret, dissecting every bar, counting how many syllables carried his obituary. Some Dipset diehards tried spinning nostalgia on Twitter, but momentum was gone. Blog headlines swapped icon for instigator. YouTube reactors roasted his Summer Jam clip frame by frame, crowd yawning, a stray boo, Flex's hand slicing across his neck to cut the feed. Comment section verdict: rap's first self-cancel.
The irony?
Jim's original critique? Relevance? Boomeranged. Nas thrived in middle age, collaborating with Hit Boy, teaching Ivy League syllabi, leveling new creative peaks. Pusha's precision disses still made world tours stall. Jim measured clout in outrage minutes and found none of it deposits at banks. Meanwhile, Clips' album quietly secured LV rollout rights, rumored to premiere at Art Basel under a partnership with Moet Hennessy. No Malice, once the quiet reborn Christian, apparently laces 2 verses colder than anything since Hell Hath No Fury. Industry tastemakers who'd booked Jim for club walkthroughs shifted budgets towards chic listening parties and liquor brand activations. Money follows mystique, not noise. Inside Dipset circles, whispers surfaced that even Cam and Jewels wished he'd never opened that podcast door. One Harlem OG told Complex off record, Jimmy mistook trending for winning. Streams and headlines can feed an ego, but they can't resurrect a silenced mic. At this point, the story stops being about beef and morphs into a cautionary parable. Culture still loves debate, but it only forgives arrogance when paired with undeniable output. Jim fired at monuments without delivering marble of his own. He forgot hip-hop's oldest unwritten law. If you dismiss the architects, your foundation crumbles first. Nas never answered with a diss. Pusha answered with art gallery theatrics. The silence of giants echoed louder than bars. And that is how the hottest talker of spring ended the year as a footnote. Muted by his own echo, outplanned by visionaries who let their legacy speak in billion-dollar moves and runway smoke. When the Clips album finally lands, and it will, expect surgical precision, not podcast chaos. Expect references to silent summer jam nights, to alleyway freestyles clicking at low resolution, to the danger of forgetting who truly shapes the timeline. Because in an era of algorithmic outrage, legacy still writes the last paragraph. Jim Jones taught the class by flunking the final. The culture took notes, stapled them to a silent stage, and filed them under how not to chase relevance. Somewhere, a kid who never memorized Dipset hooks is streaming Illmatic for the first time, Googling why this Queen's poet matters. That discovery, a 1994 cassette crackle over new headphones, does more for Nas than any headline war ever could. And that, ironically, is Jim's only enduring contribution to the legend he tried to bury. The lesson that hubris sells clicks, but humility sells centuries.